special episode. Y'all told us through your attendance and the reviews afterwards of Scaling Up that y'all's favorite session was our private equity session, which is funny for a healthcare marketing conference, but you guys made it clear that all of us healthcare marketers, what we really want to understand is how the private equity group looks at us, what makes us successful. And at the end of the day, we want to drive the business result, and nobody knows it better than the private equity marketers themselves. Anna, welcome to Ignite. How you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Where do you hail from? Where do you work?
Yeah, so I work at H.I.G Capital. We're a middle market private equity firm with $67 billion in assets under management. I'm a marketer by trade, and I was recruited by H.I.G to kind of serve as an in-house consultant. So I'm what's called an operating partner. You'll hear that term across private equity. And it essentially just means that we're people who offer resources, basically serve as like an advisory role to our portfolio companies. There's both generalist operating partners and function-specific operating partners. So I'm a marketing and go-to-market operating partner. You'll see finance operating partners, tech operating partners, et cetera, et cetera. But we essentially just serve as in-house consultants for our portfolio companies. So I focus on, I'm fairly industry agnostic, but I've been spending most of my time recently with our healthcare portfolio companies.
Is it your favorite? Do you love it?
It is now. Yeah. I've gotten pretty into it. Yeah.
It's so cool. We kind of fell into it too, but when we were figuring out our hedgehog for where we wanted to plant our flag as Cardinal, I was like, man, nothing feels better. We get to use our marketing superpower for good. These are lives you're changing. And like, we're not just selling more pizzas online. So it's a good feeling. And H.I.G Capital has a variety of different healthcare services, PT, derm.
Yeah, GI, vision, dental. Yep.
Okay. All right. Yep. So a lot of low acuity retail type stuff where it's bought online to give people a little bit of an idea of Anna's background. And specifically, like, Anna, when you are looking at a Portco's marketing function, what are you hoping to see? What does success look like? What are those building blocks you're like, okay, we can build from here?
Yeah. So, I mean, at the basis of success for a marketing team is always the reporting and measurement framework. So this is something that I think healthcare in general is behind on, largely because the industry is more focused on, care delivery and other operational challenges, but also HIPAA compliance kind of gets in the way of like simple tracking that, e-commerce and SaaS can use, right? So the first thing I want to see is full funnel tracking that's both HIPAA compliant and ultimately tying every marketing dollar back to revenue generated from patients. So, ideally a patient file in the EMR is being appended with the original marketing source. That's a lot easier said than done, but that's what like a very solid marketing team. If I see a marketing team is doing that, I know they're in the top like 95th or more percentile of middle market healthcare companies.
Yeah, they're acing the ACT. They're going to Harvard if they can do that. That's awesome. And what systems have you seen? Those top 5%ers, what have you seen them implement that's worked really well? How are they? They have integrations with EMRs. Give a high level of where you've seen that practically implemented. How do they do it?
Yeah, so it's usually something like a patient prism or a line that's integrated with the EMR, or sometimes there's a CRM kind of sitting between the call tracking and the EMR. So it's going to be different, there's all these different specialty specific EMRs. So it can really vary quite a bit, which also just adds to the complexity of the industry. And marketing, integrations are usually the last things that the EMRs want to set up. But it's usually like the call tracking CRM to EMR, or it's just call tracking to EMR if we're lucky.
It's wild how many groups come to us and they don't even have the lead tracking, call and email tracking. And you mentioned Line and Patient Prism, two of our sponsors from Scaling Up and two of our good friends. One's my neighbor and the other one's a good buddy. So yes, that's like basic stuff. And a lot of provider groups don't even have that set up. So they don't even know how many phone calls, leads, emails. And a lot of that stuff, guys, for those 3 listeners we have out there, they do more than that. They function somewhat as a CRM as well at times. And things like, this is one little nuance they both have in their back pocket. Yes, they're input compliant, they'll sign BAAs. But when an email form comes in, we know most provider groups never respond to them. I don't know why. The call centers are allergic to them. But Align and Patient Prism, if you have it enabled, will actually call the patient and the call center at the same time jointly. And so they connect them and those email forms don't get dropped off. So you're talking about something that not only tracks better, but it also helps your conversion so you don't need as much ad spend for the same amount of leads. That's cool, Anna. All right, let's talk about, so you talk about the function and the measurement, and at the end of the day, what you need is the business result, and you need to understand how much of the advertising drove that and what our return is. What do you look at when you look at the org structure of the marketing function? What structure have you seen work best? The in-house, the out-of-house, all of that kind of stuff. What do you look for there?
Yeah, well, it really varies on the size of the company, right? So like a much smaller healthcare company is not going to be able to support, a large marketing organization. I always encourage our portfolio portfolio companies to be strategic with the use of outside resources versus just trying to hire for every single function in-house. It's almost better to just find people that know the specialty and know the industry really, really well, and then use kind of expert outside resources in some cases. I think for bigger companies, you have people that have the kind of like marketing and digital side and the healthcare side, but for lower middle market, that can be challenging. So I think it's just like the case of like networking into the right agencies, the right tech partners, and, you know, kind of letting them manage the marketing and digital piece, and then focusing on kind of applying it to the specific business.
Yeah. Lower middle market. What do you think the first hire is? Is it someone that has digital experience, especially for these retail-y type healthcare provider groups? Is that where people ask me all the time? And I'm like, I think you want digital, but I might be biased. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you do. Because a lot of it is demand capture these days with like paid search and SEO, and just making sure that you're there when someone is searching for the services. It really varies though. You know, if it's a more like kind of retail service that there's going to be a higher volume of searches for versus if it's like a more like if it's like GI or another specialty, it's going to be largely referral based, right? And so if it's referral based, you almost want someone that kind of understands the like that can work with like a patient liaison team or a physician liaison team, and that can do like more provider marketing. If it's more like retail, then you're looking at someone with the digital growth experience. The first hire is really like what I want in a first hire is basically just someone that can own the patient journey, like the inbound patient journey all the way to onboarding. So that kind of they understand the basics of, you know, digital media, campaigns, SEO, website optimization, call tracking, and then from there it kind of, you know, the function, then it goes into patient onboarding, which is typically owned by operations, someone on the operations side. But yeah, I want them to be really thinking of like every touch point up until that person becomes a new patient.
So you're saying that you don't want a marketer just focus on getting the lead and going back to work. You want them to think about, is the call center converting? Do we have capacity? All that kind of fun stuff.
Exactly.
MOPS, we call it MOPS, marketing and ops alignment. A friend gave me that one time.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, Teresa, she's at PRM. She's really sharp. And how do you, I have another question I want to ask. I'll jump to this one. How do you suggest marketers get that knowledge? They don't need do they need to come to you with an MBA? Do they need a strong CEO they become buddies with? Like, how do they get to the business result needed and track it all the way through without stepping on people's toes and pissing everyone off?
Like, how do they learn how to be marketers? Or no, you're asking
how do they measure the business result? Usually there's going to be an operations leader that's over call center and stuff. It may not want anybody stepping on their toes and things like that. Have you seen successful marketers? Do you have any practical advice? Hey, listen, go be buddies with them, or go get your MBA, or get this dashboard set up in this way. Like,
you know, I don't know that MBAs in healthcare are going to be, like, for a marketer in healthcare, you're probably not going to learn it in your MBA program, right? You're probably just going to learn it by doing. Having like an MHA, like a Master's in Health Administration, might be more valuable. But again, for marketing, so much of it changes so rapidly that the stuff you learned your first year would be obsolete by the time you graduated. So yeah, to kind of like have the respect of the team, I think you just have to like center the patient care and the care delivery and show that that's your primary focus. And then I think the relationships with, you know, the head of operations, whoever else will follow.
All of those Ocon. That's what we've been preaching, guys. We can't just be marketers for marketing's sake and drive more leads and then walk away from it. Like, nobody cares. CEO and the private equity team doesn't care about that. They want the business result and how much revenue is generated. Oh, I want to talk about marketing for a second. All right, you're deeply embedded in UC. We talked about demand capture. Google's losing market share slowly. How long do you think we've got on the PPC drug, and where are you seeing the most sophisticated provider groups starting to change their marketing? Are they going into different channels and funnels? What are you seeing them do differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be an increased focus on the like patient liaison or physician liaison teams. So people who are partnering with, you know, referrers, having a strong team there. And that's something that kind of sits in between marketing and operations. And it's not always clear like who owns that team. It will just, you know, depend on the company. So I think that will be an increased area of investment in terms of like headcount and also like marketing resources, sales collateral, that kind of thing. Otherwise, it does seem like some brands are building up organic social presences. I don't know that I've ever seen that as like a huge lead gen source, but it's almost more of like a branding piece. And then, you know, there's just the point too of like, you know, as we start to learn what works for like ChatGPT SEO, staying on top of that as the, you know, the AI search engine steal share from Google.
Yeah.
But I think we're kind of in our infancy there. That's relatively new still.
Yeah. My wife is sitting on the couch all the time and she just asks ChatGPT like, hey, give me a dermatologist. And I'm like, you don't want to go to Google and then search through 10 links to find the best one? She's like, no, I want the answer. And I'm like, wow, I think a lot of people are going to start doing it. And then the next night she'll be on TikTok and she'll start getting served ads for the cool dermatologist down the street. And I'm like, wow, this is really changing. Google is losing market share, and my wife might be one of the first adopters, but how long of a runway do you have? And I don't know.
No, a huge percentage of people are already using ChatGPT as a search engine. I don't know the stat off my head, but it's high. I mean, my prediction is that eventually they'll introduce ads into the platform, as everyone does. So then it will just become, we'll just have to manage two different paid search accounts.
Yeah, it's going to become the same thing, because at the end of the day, ChatGPT, it's kind of just surfing the web. But when it's not just surfing the web anymore, what's it going to give? The same dermatologist over and over to everyone, and they're going to get flooded with 1 million people in Atlanta. And then, so advertising will be introduced, and TikTok is very interesting. You seeing any porcos using TikTok advertising successfully, or any of them doing anything there?
Yeah, but more on the consumer side, typically. Yeah.
Very cool.
I don't know. Have you guys used any of your companies?
Yeah, we're rolling out campaigns. Okay. Yeah, we are. And we brought over a few people. I've just onboarded 3 paid social specialists with TikTok experience, because we're getting asked more and more. But a lot of provider groups are still a bit antiquated. Like, they're still hooked on the run PPC, more PPC drug and more SEO. Mm-hmm. And we know the patient journey is changing, and she's getting information from a lot of different places. And so we have been pushing our clients, but they're starting to dabble in meta. Like, that is, healthcare is so far behind. I mean, everyone, healthcare is now starting to dabble quite a bit in meta, and we'll see TikToks in a few years. But yeah, we're starting to get into it. The algorithm is better than meta. You have to let the algorithm run, is what we have found. The less optimizations, the better. The Chinese have us better figured out than we do. It's
I mean, wild. It doesn't help that we're just telling TikTok exactly what we like, versus Meta's just basically guessing at it based off of like hover time, which is harder. So it's interesting. Do you find that Meta, I'm sorry, not to just reverse it and ask you questions, but do you find that Meta is working well for like smaller healthcare companies, or is it bigger, more like retail healthcare?
Yeah, bigger retail healthcare. Okay. So at some point, our groups will run out of capture, and there's no more efficient PPC spend out there. But those are the ones with hundreds of locations that are spending $1,500 per location, and it's just not getting efficient. Yeah. You've gone and captured all of the fish that are already looking in the sea, and now we have to go make more people aware and all that stuff. So we'll start going upper funnel. That's why we built our own modeling system. We call it RevRx. No, Anna did not come on here as a plant to ask me that to lead me into this, I promise. But that's why we have our own modeling solution, because it came out of necessity. We had too many clients reaching the point of saturation. We said, we don't know where your next best dollar should be spent. So we engineered a model that uses investment modeling combined with our healthcare expertise. We take in capacity, blah, blah, blah. And we spit out, hey, listen, whether it's Meta, TikTok, billboards, linear TV, or digital, this is where your next best dollar could be spent, marginal ROI, if you will. And so the bigger groups are utilizing that now. Most groups under 100 locations can spend more on PPC, and they don't. So that's still where they're at. And we are trying to educate them to start getting out of the PPC thing, because that alone will not work in 3 years, in my opinion. So we'll see. The problem with a lot of the demand generation stuff with programmatic and Meta and TikTok is it requires much better creative. And that's another investment. I don't know if they don't know if they want to do that. And so that's tricky. Do any of your groups, you have big groups, Anna, at H.I.G. Do you see any of them in-house creative? Do they have an in-house creative designer? Do they use agencies for everything? Is it not a major function?
Yeah, really varies by company, just depending on who's in-house. And, then there's like, some of them will use ChatGPT, obviously use AI to help edit creative, things like that. But yeah, that really just varies depending on the size of the team. Yeah. So and there's not really a standard answer.
And I find it interesting that I'm reading between the tea leaves, but it sounds like you prefer a small in-house team and then use agencies. Why, or contractors or whatever, why does PE believe that? Because it scales faster. Hey, we need to sell this in 3 to 5 years for triple. We don't have time for you to build the in-house empire. Why is that the theory at PE?
Yeah, well, it kind of enables you to use like kind of a point solution, like best in class for each, individual function, which is always better, obviously, if you can afford it and if you can manage it. And then it also just creates more nimble teams, right? Like if you have, if you're always just adding headcount, that creates organizational complexity, organizational challenges. So relying on agencies just gives you more flexibility to, scale up, scale down as needed.
Yeah, I love it. Smarter and faster, guys. That's going to be the headline of this. And ended up being a promotional tool. I love it. Going into, I have only 2 more questions and we'll get you out of here. Regulations around HIPAA compliance and full funnel tracking. I know you're very keen on that and understanding the return. Like what is your view on how compliance will change? We're going into 2025, guys, to timestamp this. Are your portcos generally as concerned as we were a few years, or, we have the pixel, we don't care anymore, or we're still very safe, or we're starting to push boundaries again? How do you view that?
Yeah, I think this is one of those areas where marketers just need to know their own limits. So this is just an area where I try to stay close to legal on versus just having a marketing team wing it. Like there's, this is kind of like in the intersection of marketing, tech, and legal, but ultimately it's more of like a legal question. So I just advise marketing teams to just stay very close to their legal departments versus like interpreting it themselves, essentially.
No more self-interpretation. Oh my gosh, Anna, we meet with groups that are like, we've got the pixel on. Other groups are like, no, don't even put that. And we have a CDP and we're not going to touch anything. So you've got the whole spectrum there. We'll see what happens in the next year. What is one trend? Final question I've got for you. What is one marketing strategy or tactic you're really excited about going into 25 you think should be invested in more? Doesn't need to be newfangled. Could just be the same old stuff that works well. Up to you. But what is something you're excited about next year?
Yeah, I think it's just going to be more content marketing as Google is just like returning and AI is just returning so many of the answers. Already, you kind of want to be featured in the source there. I think there's just an opportunity to kind of like grow your domain rank and your domain authority so that when someone is really searching with the intent of booking, like you're on the top page. So obviously you'll never compete with the big medical publishers, but I think there's like a local strategy there, putting the right keywords on specific local pages. I see more and more companies doing that, and we see big gains with that. So
yeah, unique and differentiated content to cut through the AI ocean of sameness.
That cut through the ocean of sameness, but also, because there is so much more content coming out of AI, if you aren't using that, you'll be left behind. So yeah, kind of keeping up with the ocean of content coming out of AI is important too.
So wild. It's like we need our own ocean, but it's got to be a better ocean. Yeah, it's tricky. We're in a weird new world. The cool thing, Anna, with marketing and being marketers is that there's a ton of job security because this thing changes in healthcare every like 6 months. So it is very cool. This thing is changing a lot. Marketers, Anna, where can they find you?
Where can they find me?
LinkedIn? Are you pretty active?
Oh yeah. No, I don't have a big presence on Twitter or anything like that. So yeah, LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn.
Find her on LinkedIn, guys. She's absolutely brilliant, and our team can attest. I think our team's pretty sharp. And Lauren, Chief Growth Officer, said Anna's super sharp. You need to have her on Ignite. This did not disappoint. I had a ton of fun, and it's always fun for marketers. And it's a good reminder for me what actually matters at the end of the day. It's not more rankings. It's not more clicks. It's not more leads. It's the business result in growing this and connecting more patients with care. Anna, thank you for joining us on Ignite. This has been an awesome time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.